They expected him to die quietly. They expected tuberculosis to take him before he ever became a threat. They expected weakness. Instead, the Wild West got one of the most feared, sharp-minded, and lethal men it would ever know. A dying gunslinger who refused to fade and instead carved his name into frontier legend. Doc Holliday was not born to be an outlaw or a gunman. He was born into education, discipline, and privilege. Trained as a dentist, refined in manners, intelligent, articulate, he looked like a man destined for a respectable life. But fate rewrote his story when he was diagnosed with tuberculosis, a disease that at the time was almost always a death sentence. Facing inevitable decline, Holliday made a decision few would dare to make. If life was going to be short, it would be lived on his own terms. He left behind conventional society and traveled west, drawn to dry climates believed to slow his illness, but also to places where reputation, nerve, and intelligence mattered more than status. The frontier did not care about his background. It only cared whether he could survive. Holliday became a gambler, a strategist, and eventually a gunman. Not because he sought violence, but because survival in the West often demanded it. He was calm under pressure, cold in confrontation, sharp in conversation, and deadly when crossed. Unlike many frontier gunslingers, Doc Holliday did not rely on brute force or intimidation. He relied on intellect. He analyzed people. He read intentions. He anticipated betrayal. He calculated risk before pulling a trigger. His illness gave him a dangerous edge. A man who believed he had little to lose could afford to be fearless. While others hesitated, Holliday moved. While others backed down, he stood firm. His reputation grew not just as a fighter, but as someone who could not be easily rattled. His friendship with Wyatt Earp further solidified his place in Western history. Where Earp represented law and structure, Holliday represented unpredictability and precision. Together, they became a force that shaped some of the most famous confrontations in the Old West, including the legendary gunfight at the OK Corral. But Holliday was never just a side character in someone else's story. He was a man battling death while outthinking criminals, rivals, and lawmen alike. Duels. He survived shootouts. He navigated betrayals. He lived under constant physical decline, yet remained mentally sharp until the very end. Holliday, truly dangerous, was not just his ability with a gun. In a world filled with men driven by ego, rage, and fear, Holliday operated with cold restraint. He rarely wasted words. He rarely wasted motion. When violence erupted, he acted decisively, not emotionally. And the West took notice. Some feared him, some admired him, some underestimated him, many regretted it. Behind the legend, however, was a tragic reality. Holliday was racing against time. Each year weakened his body further. Each winter made breathing harder. Each confrontation carried the risk that his illness, not a bullet, would be what finally ended him. Yet instead of retreating, he leaned deeper into the chaos of frontier life. If he was going to die, he would die remembered. By the time the West realized it was dealing with more than just another gunslinger, Doc Holliday had already become something far more dangerous. A dying man with nothing to fear. If you're enjoying this true Wild West story so far, take a second to support the channel. Leave a like, subscribe, and stay with us for more powerful frontier legends. As Doc Holliday's reputation spread across the frontier, it became clear that he was not like most gunslingers of his time. While many men in the Old West relied on intimidation, loud bravado, or raw aggression, Holliday relied on something far more dangerous: control. He did not seek attention. He did not boast. He did not perform. When conflict came, he handled it with precision, calculation, and a level of composure that unsettled both enemies and allies. Holliday's illness continued to shape his mindset. Tuberculosis weakened his body, but it sharpened his perspective. Knowing his time was limited, he had no patience for foolish risks or emotional outbursts. Where others reacted impulsively, he analyzed. Where others panicked, he remained calm. This psychological edge made him exceptionally difficult to intimidate. He became deeply involved in gambling, a world where reading people meant survival. Around poker tables, Holliday honed his ability to detect lies, anticipate behavior, and exploit weakness. These skills translated seamlessly into conflict on the streets. He could sense when violence was about to erupt. He could predict betrayal before it happened, and when necessary, he could act before anyone else had time to react. His friendship with Wyatt Earp became one of the most influential alliances in Western history. The two men complemented each other in ways few partnerships ever did. Earp represented law, structure, and calculated authority. Holliday represented unpredictability, sharp intelligence, and a willingness to do what others hesitated to do. Together, they formed a combination that both criminals and rival factions feared. This partnership reached its most famous moment in Tombstone, Arizona, where tensions between lawmen and outlaw factions escalated into open conflict. Holliday's role in the events surrounding the gunfight at the Corral cemented his reputation as more than just a gambler. He was a decisive force in one of the most legendary confrontations in American frontier history. But beyond the headlines, Holliday lived a constant internal battle. Each year his coughing worsened. Each season drained more strength from his body. Each cold night reminded him that time was running out. And yet he refused to slow down. Instead of retreating into safety, Holliday leaned deeper into danger. Some believe he did this because he had little left to lose. Others argue he simply refused to let illness define him. Either way, his declining health only amplified his aura. A man standing at the edge of death, still calm, still dangerous, still sharper than most men in their prime. His temper, though controlled, could flare when provoked. He did not tolerate disrespect. He did not forgive betrayal easily. Conflicts followed him not because he sought them, but because his reputation attracted challengers. Men who wanted to test themselves against someone rumored to be both brilliant and lethal. Most of them underestimated him. Holliday's gunfights were rarely chaotic. They were quick, deliberate, and final. He did not waste shots. He did not hesitate. He understood that in the West, hesitation could be fatal, especially for a man whose health gave him fewer second chances. Despite his reputation, Holliday was not a mindless killer. He had a code, however unconventional it may have been. He valued loyalty. He respected intelligence, and he remained fiercely protective of the few people he trusted. His bond with Wyatt Earp, in particular, would place him at the center of some of the most intense revenge-driven conflicts the frontier had ever seen. But with every year, the pressure grew. Enemies multiplied. His health declined further. The consequences of his past actions closed in. Doc Holliday had outsmarted rivals, outlasted threats, and survived battles that should have killed him. But the deeper he went into the violent world of the Old West, the more inevitable one truth became: at runtime. The next chapter of his story would test not just his intelligence or his aim, but his loyalty, his limits, and the legacy he would leave behind. By the peak of his notoriety, Doc Holliday had become far more than a gambler or an associate of famous lawmen. He had become one of the most respected and feared figures in the Old West. Not because he was loud, reckless, or hungry for attention, but because he carried himself with a rare combination of intelligence, restraint, and quiet menace. People did not fear Holliday because he boasted. They feared him because he never needed to. His role in the aftermath of the gunfight at the Corral pushed him deeper into the violent politics of frontier justice. When tensions escalated into the infamous Earp vendetta ride, Holliday stood beside Wyatt Earp as a loyal ally, helping hunt down men believed responsible for attacks on the Earp family. What followed was a relentless campaign fueled by grief, anger, and a sense of moral retribution. For Holliday, loyalty was not negotiable. He did not see himself as a hero. He did not claim to be a lawman. But once he committed to a cause, he carried it through with unwavering resolve. During this period, his reputation hardened. Some viewed him as a ruthless killer. Others saw him as a disciplined enforcer of frontier justice. The truth sat somewhere in between. Holliday was a man who operated by his own code in a world that rarely offered moral clarity. While many men in the West sought glory through violence, Holliday remained focused on efficiency. He avoided unnecessary conflict when possible, but when confrontation became inevitable, he acted decisively. His calm under fire became legendary. Witnesses often described him as eerily composed in moments where most men would panic. His declining health added a dark edge to everything he did. Tuberculosis continued to weaken him. His coughing fits worsened. Fatigue became constant. Cold weather brought agony. Yet his mind remained in some ways, knowing his life would likely be short made him more dangerous. He had little fear of consequences. While others worried about long-term survival, Holliday focused on the present. The next decision, the next confrontation, the next moment where intelligence and nerve mattered more than physical strength. He traveled frequently, moving between towns where his reputation often arrived before he did. In some places, he was welcomed. In others, he was viewed with suspicion. But almost everywhere, he was recognized as someone not to be taken lightly. The West, for all its chaos, respected competence. Still, the emotional cost of his lifestyle continued to grow. Years of gambling, violence, instability, and illness wore on him. He lived with the knowledge that he would likely not grow old, not settle into comfort, and not escape the consequences of the choices he had made. Yet he refused to express regret publicly. Instead, he leaned into sharp wit, dry humor, and a demeanor that suggested he accepted his fate long before others would. Behind the guns, the gambling, and the legend was a man deeply aware of his own mortality. He read constantly. He remained intellectually curious. He valued conversation and cleverness. He maintained standards in a world that often lacked them. It made him both admirable and difficult to understand. As time passed, new gunmen rose. The West continued to evolve. Towns grew. Law enforcement became more organized. The era of wandering gunslingers slowly began to fade. But Holliday remained, stubbornly refusing to fade quietly. His presence became symbolic, a reminder of a raw, dangerous era that was beginning to disappear, but his body was failing faster than the frontier itself. Every year made movement harder. Winter made breathing more painful. Every violent encounter risked pushing him beyond recovery, and yet he continued forward, not because he believed he would win against death, but because he refused to let death dictate how he lived. As Holliday approached the final stretch of his life, his battles would shift from street confrontations and rivalries to something far more personal, a final test not of his aim or his intelligence, but of his endurance, his dignity, and the legacy he would leave behind. As Doc Holliday reached the final years of his life, the Wild West he had helped define was slowly disappearing. Railroads stretched across the frontier, towns grew more structured, law became more organized. The era of wandering gunmen and volatile frontier justice was giving way to a more controlled and modern America, but Holliday was not built for comfort, stability, or long life. Tuberculosis continued to ravage his body. What had once been a sharp, agile mind housed in a capable frame was now constrained by exhaustion, pain, and labored breathing. Cough reminded him that time was running out. Each winter made survival harder. Each mile traveled demanded more strength than he had left. Eventually, Holliday sought relief in the dry mountain air of Colorado, settling in Glenwood Springs in hopes that the climate might ease his suffering. Far from gunfights, gambling halls, and vendettas, he faced the only enemy he could never outdraw. The man who had stared down armed rivals without flinching now lay confined to a bed, weakened not by bullets but by disease. Even in his final days, Holliday's sharp wit and composed demeanor remained. Witnesses recalled that he faced his approaching end with the same calm that had defined him in life, without panic, without regret, without surrendering his identity. His final moments carried a bitter irony. Doc Holliday, who had survived shootouts, ambushes, rival gunmen, and revenge campaigns, did not die in a dramatic gunfight. He died quietly in 1887, at only 36 years old, a victim of illness rather than violence. The West lost one of its sharpest minds and most dangerous tacticians, not to chaos but to time. Yet Holliday's legacy refused to fade. He became immortalized in Western folklore, books, films, and legends. Often portrayed as a gunslinger, a villain, or a sidekick, his true story remains more complex. A dying man who chose to live boldly, think strategically, and face danger with unmatched composure. He was not the fastest gun in the West. He was not the strongest. He was not the loudest. But he may have been the most intelligent. Holliday represents a deeper truth about the Old West, that power does not always come from brute force, and courage does not always look like heroism. Sometimes, it looks like a man who knows he will lose the war against time, but refuses to let that knowledge weaken his resolve. If this story gave you a new respect for one of the most misunderstood figures in Wild West history, take a moment now. Leave a like to support long-form historical documentaries that honor real stories over myths. Subscribe to the channel for more cinematic true stories about the legends who shaped the American frontier. And comment below, do you believe Doc Holliday was the smartest gunslinger the Wild West ever produced? Because in the end, Doc Holliday was not remembered as the man who lived the longest. He was remembered as the man who refused to live in fear, even when death was inevitable.